So, the BBC is in big trouble this evening. The Telegraph newspaper has published a report which it got from an internal whistleblower, and that whistleblower is about an internal memo that is doing the rounds in the BBC about how they falsified reports and falsified news items, particularly around Donald Trump and the Donald Trump administration and the Donald Trump campaign during the last election. They gave specific examples of where the BBC basically took clips or excerpts from speeches and from things that Donald Trump said and took them completely out of context, or clipped them, or only took a very small portion of them to make it appear that he was saying one thing when in actual fact he was saying something else. So, for example, in the Panorama programme, they gave excerpts and clips from his speech during January the 6th when the so-called insurrection took place. And they made it appear that Donald Trump was inciting crowds to go to the Capitol building and riot. But they took those clips completely out of context and shortened them and didn't show everything that he said, making it appear that he said one thing when in reality he said something else. They've also got clips of him appearing to incite violence against senators when in reality he said no such thing. So effectively what the BBC has been caught doing and is actually owned up to doing in its own internal memos is falsifying the news, is falsifying the facts that they present to you. Now bear in mind that they pride themselves on being the arbiter of truth and honesty. They pride themselves on being the global organisation that is the most long-running, most stable, most reliable bringer of news globally. They even have their own unit called Verify, run by somebody called Mariana Spring, which is supposed to go away and fact check and falsify check any other data or any other news that's put out by other people. Yet all this time, they're falsifying things themselves. They're taking things out of context themselves. They're presenting an agenda as opposed to presenting the truth. The ironic thing about this is that Tommy Robinson, Stephen Lennon, caught them doing this many years ago. If you haven't seen it yet, go and watch Panorama, which is where Panorama were making a documentary about him. And Stephen, or Tommy, whatever you want to name him, caught out the main presenter, John Sweeney, as effectively bribing witnesses, coercing witnesses into saying certain things against him that then turned out subsequently not to be true. He caught it all on camera. He fronted them up on camera. He embarrassed them on camera. And ultimately, John Sweeney had to leave the Panorama programme because of it. That was years ago, but it's still going on. And yet the BBC have the front to create an organisation in the last 18 months, 2 years, called Verify, fronted up by Mariana Spring, allegedly to counter false information, allegedly to investigate and bring down other organisations or other forms of media who are presenting false information, yet the whole time they're doing it themselves. Donald Trump is a very litigious man. He's already sued media companies in the USA for doing very similar things. It would not surprise me at all that if he can prove that this is true, that if this turns out to be verifiable and that this internal whistleblower and this internal document doing the rounds around the BBC turns out to be true, he's going to be dragging them through the courts. What are the BBC going to do? This could well be the final nail in the coffin. This could be the thing that ends them being state funded, ends them being funded from your pocket and my pocket. This could bring them down completely and force them to completely revamp and go the way of becoming a commercial TV company that is more, more subject to the same regulations and the same rules that everyone else has to play by. Go and look it up. Go and look up the Telegraph article. Go and look up the false information presented about Donald Trump. And go and look up Mariana Spring and Verify. Laughable.